What's up? First things first, I've been having some serious issues with my messages, my YouTube messages. It says I have messages that I don't have, and some of the messages appear, they're marked red even though I haven't read them. So I don't know what's going on with that. I guess it's some sort of general, maybe it's some sort of general YouTube issue. But with that being said, if for some reason you needed to give me a message, something you really wanted me to read or whatever, wait until Monday, because I think that they're going to do their maintenance. YouTube does the site maintenance on Sundays, I believe, usually. So if there's something you absolutely want to make sure that I get and doesn't get lost somewhere in the internets, wait until Monday and send me that. Now this is going to be a somewhat longer video, so for all of you who don't want to watch a somewhat longer video, I'll see you later. Maybe I'll see you at Mayhem. If you're going, I'll be the fat guy with the hoodie and a Black Dahlia Murder shirt. Not this one, I got a different one. Perhaps with a video camera. I might tape some of the shows, and depending on the sound quality, I might put some up. So that's not a guarantee, but you might get to see some of that. My good camera is really finicky about putting stuff on my computer. It is such a bastard to do, which is why I'm using this webcam, because it's just so much easier. So now one of the messages that did get through was now I don't usually like to talk about the debate over evolution, but I received a long, somewhat convoluted but interesting letter on evolution, which I'd like to read and discuss with you today. So that's today's episode. Alright? The letter is titled Evolution. Basing your beliefs on the theory of evolution by deciding which of the two opposing sides makes less sense is not a good way to make up your mind on an issue. If it was I could come up with a stupid idea, wait for people to respond, find people that come up with an even more stupid idea, and make a public debate on which idea was better, and everyone would accept my first idea. First of all, let me clarify. There's a lot of spelling errors and grammar errors in this letter. So if I trip up over some stuff, that's not me. That's the author. The fact is, the problems with the theory of evolution has nothing to do with religion, but to do with science. It's just not well publicized or understood. I have thought about this myself and have come to a few arguments that I haven't seen and I think are very strong. Actually, I originally made this letter for another YouTuber, but I thought you might appreciate what I have to say, so here it goes. In the understanding of evolution, most people do not make a distinction between what happened, i.e. change from one species to another, and how it happened, i.e. through the process of natural selection and random mutations. Stephen Jay Gould made this distinction when he labels what happened as fact and how it happened as theory. Evolutionists have been very clear about this distinction of fact and theory from the very beginning, if only because we have always acknowledged how far we are from completely understanding the mechanisms, theory, by which evolution, fact, occurred. Well, if you're arguing the theory of evolution, I mean, I think you have some confusion as to what theory and fact means, but we'll get into that later because it gets into more of that. We're not distantly far from understanding this. If we were distantly far from understanding how evolution works, it wouldn't be a theory, it would be a hypothesis. All right, and these are not the same things. On a side note, if fact is by definition what you observe, doesn't that mean that the idea that we came from a common ancestor is a theory and not a fact because we haven't observed it? Well, I mean, you have a problem here, okay? Because basically what you're saying is, since we don't have a time machine that we can go back and record all of human evolution, or whatever evolution, in real time, then we can never, say that it happened. That's basically what you're saying. What we have observed are the changes from one species to another. The transitional fossils, the links in DNA between different species. These things are observed, and these things go to prove, within a scientific level of doubt, that evolution occurred. But, alright, let's continue. But for my purposes, it serves me well to have labels for this distinction between what happened and how it happened. That is fact and theory. Also, the idea that the theory of evolution only refers to natural selection and random mutation is also helpful in my argument. Many people argue that theory in science is not just an idea, but rather an idea based on fact with evidence to back it up. Not many argue. All people that understand scientific methods say that. That's what the scientific method is. We're not arguing about what the scientific method is. That's a fact. That's something that's been created. A theory is not just an idea. All right, that's a hypothesis. Okay, you might have a hypothesis about something. You say, okay, I think maybe this is how this happens, right? And then you would take that hypothesis and you would test it in as many ways as possible. And as long as all the tests that you do and all the evidence that you collect corresponds with your hypothesis and makes it better and doesn't, fuck with part of it, eventually it will become a theory. All right. Think of hypothesis as idea and theory as close to proven as you can possibly get, for the most part. Gravity theory, okay, which is pretty much proven. And this has been a huge thing that the Christian right has used to confuse stupid people that don't even understand how scientific method works. Which is why it's so important to teach science in schools, at least teach people how science works, okay? Because uneducated people don't know how it works, right? And it's good to get people to understand how the scientific method works, and how, by using the scientific method, you will always find out whether you were right or wrong about your hypothesis when it's used properly, okay? You can't exclude things that you don't like, all right? That doesn't work within proper scientific method, then it's not really scientific method now, is it? Science has to be unbiased, all right? That's a very important thing to remember. Now, most people that make such claims will usually bring up evidence to support the fact. By the way, I'm not sure why you would need evidence to support a fact. I thought facts were the evidence. You're playing with words. Is what you're doing right here. You bring evidence to support your theory or your hypothesis, and once you form a theory, all the evidence should correspond with that. All right. Evidence is fact. Evidence, fact, these two things are interchangeable. Okay. Just like if you were at a murder trial and you say, well, we found the victim's blood on the murder weapon. Okay, that's fact. All right, by itself, that's a fact. Okay, and then you take that, and when it's put into your theory of who killed the guy, it becomes evidence for the theory. Okay. Criminal law is probably not the best thing to equate with scientific method, but it's close enough for you to understand what it is. We usually bring evidence to support the fact of evolution, i.e. fossils, patterns in the DNA, or patterns in morphology, etc. But when it comes to the evidence for the theory of evolution, the evidence usually comes in the form of an explanation rather than actual evidence. Not really. Let's take a closer look at the theory of evolution. The theory says that evolution occurred through natural selection and random mutation. Now, most people focus on the natural selection as the driver for evolution, and the random mutations only giving them material to work with. But I would like to focus on the random mutation part. Of course you would. Why? Because let's say that mutations were in fact not random, but rather controlled through some mechanism in the body. We would still have natural selection. It would just serve a completely different function than it supposedly does. Now, this is when we get into the meat of what this individual is trying to do. Through the rest of this letter, basically what he's going to do is support a God of the Gaps theory in evolution and claim that random mutation, because he doesn't think it could be random, must be controlled by some outside force. So that's the gist of what's going on here. All right. We can see what kind of function natural selection would have if the mutations were not random by looking at any form of evolution other than biological. Now this is when it gets into BS, all right here. So the question is, are the mutations happening by chance? I'm sorry, I skipped a paragraph. For example, the evolution of language can come through natural selection. The environment in this case, the people naturally selected certain words, but the individual words did not come by accident, but rather someone made a choice and decided to use that word. And therefore, the role of natural selection is only to guide the evolution and has only a secondary role, but the people who actually make the words are the ones who made the language and serve as the primary roles. All right. The same applies to the evolution of technological products, technologies, whole architecture, maths, business, estate, etc. All right. What happened here is you have confused natural with artificial. Okay. Language is not natural selection in the strictest terms, because I'm choosing on my own. All right. Now, maybe the language will adapt, the people's usage of it will adapt to fit the situation. All right. That's sometimes true. But for the most part, I am making the decision of, I being people, are making the decision of what the language is going to be. And the same thing goes with technology, architecture, math, science, the state, business, etc. These are human-made things, okay? You cannot equate this to nature, right? So the question is, are the mutations happening by chance, or is there a mechanism controlling it? Because without a reason to believe that the changes in DNA that cause positive change are the result of a random cause, the whole theory falls apart, and natural selection becomes irrelevant in explaining how we evolved, and it can only explain why we evolved in this way, and the explanation being because it fits with the environment. Now you might say I am cheating by putting in the qualifier that the changes in DNA must cause positive change, but I'm not really. I'm just saying that each change must be positive, but rather the outcome. Okay, each change must, I think he meant to say must not be positive, but rather the outcome must be positive. And I hope that you agree that the I we have is a positive change from when an I first evolved. And if you don't like the word positive, I can say technologically more advanced. All right. Okay. Let's keep going, and we'll talk about this. The reason why I need to say positive is because there's a very good reason to believe that random changes in DNA can cause a negative result, because we know they do. All right. So basically, what this person has done is claimed that negative results are random, positive results are guided. Okay. Or I'm sorry, negative mutations are random, but positive mutations are guided. That's what this person has done. How did they reach that conclusion? Don't know. But that's what they've said. Okay, fine. Now, I've never seen a reason to believe that changes are random, other than if they are not random, then how did it happen? So it must be by chance. No. So the evidence for the theory of evolution is that I can't think of any other way that it could have happened, so it must be by chance. No, that is not how science works. That's how you think science works. That's not how science works. Trust me. Scientists are very interested in things like this, okay? If an evolutionist thought that there was a good reason to believe that these mutations were guided through some biological guide, or through some sort of extra, some sort of supernatural guide, they would investigate that. They're all about finding out why things happen. There is no bias in science, okay? And that's what you fail to understand. So no, believe it. Now I have never seen a reason to believe that changes are random, other than if they are not random, then how did it happen? So it must be by chance. That is not how science works. Okay, you're wrong. All right. So the evidence for the theory of evolution is that I can't think of any other way that it could have happened, so it must be by chance. No. No, no, no. No, no, no. Obviously, this is not science but belief. No. Because you're wrong. You don't understand how science works. Anyway, someone who can imagine a possible way that the DNA can change without a mechanism doesn't have a very good imagination. A computer can change its codes based on the environment. Obviously, it won't make changes in the code that tell it what changes to make, otherwise it would be unstable, so you have separate parts of the code. Some parts are more flexible than others. Okay, some are in control and other parts are changed as needed and are regulated and controlled by other parts, and in the same way it could be with the DNA code. No, okay, computers are not DNA, alright? A computer will only do things that is within its parameters, within its programming. A computer will only do something that it's been allowed to do. My computer isn't going to get better by sitting there, okay? It doesn't work that way. The computer doesn't reproduce, all right? This computer, okay, it's a good computer. I got a good computer. I got the AMD 64x2 processor, which is good for most things. It makes things run fast. It kind of fucks with some of my games, but still, I got the 8800 graphics card. I got 2 gigs of RAM. It runs pretty quick. I got a good motherboard. It's a decent computer. But it's not going to get any better on its own. Okay, I have to do something to it, or someone does. All right, a human being has to come in and change this. This is the problem here. You're trying to put God, you're trying to put a creator into evolution by comparing a natural process to an artificial process, and they're not the same thing. You can't just do that. That might work on stupid people, but anyone who knows shit, you can't do that. All right. This computer or your car, okay, are not going to get better on their own just by sitting there, all right? Also, there are millions of things that we can't imagine what the cause is. We don't just say it happened by chance. In fact, ultimately, we don't know the cause of anything, but that's another topic. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean ultimately we don't know the cause of the universe? True. That's not really important. And it doesn't really go into this argument here, okay? Remember this. Evolution does not, at any point, attempt to explain the origin of life, okay? That is not, it's not in there, okay? There are some other ideas about how life started, but that's not what evolution is. Evolution just explains how life changes and becomes more complex over time, okay? Some might say that it's possible that it happened through random mutations and natural selection, and that in itself is good reason to think it might have happened that way. No, again, you're misunderstanding how science works. Now, some might say it's possible that it happened through random mutations and natural selection. If someone just said that, that would be a hypothesis, right? But the thing is that they've tested that, and now we have a theory, okay? You're equating theory with hypothesis. A theory is not a guess, okay? I can't stress that enough. Theory does not equal guess. All right, that's the most important thing you can get out of this, that everyone needs to understand when it comes to science. Theory does not equal guess, okay? But how is it possible? It doesn't seem like it's possible. You can't give me the maths that show how it's possible, okay? You can't give me a computer simulation to show how it's possible. The computer simulations that have been made do not prove that it is possible, but it's too long a topic to go in here. I don't know what you're fucking talking about, but okay. We don't find that it happens anywhere else, so that means it would have to have happened just once because all biological evolution came from the same ancestor. I don't really know what you're trying to say here. I guess you're trying to say that evolution isn't true because no other things besides life evolved. And that's true because these things are not alive, okay? A star does not have DNA. A rock does not have DNA. And they don't reproduce, okay? So they can't change like that on their own, through natural selection and random mutation because they don't have DNA. They're not alive. or RNA in the case of viruses. And we don't necessarily say that all biological evolution came from the same ancestor. That doesn't have to be true. Okay, they could have started from several different ancestors. The earliest life is probably very similar, well, not very similar, but similar in the sense to viruses. Okay, viruses aren't really alive, sort of. They don't meet all the criteria for all the other things that are alive. Okay, so the earliest life forms were probably like viruses, but even simpler than our current viruses. Okay, some sort of self-replicating thing. All right, and there could have been several of those things that evolved in different environments on the Earth. All right, and that might have led to different strings of evolution. Okay, we can't say for sure if we all came from the same ancestor because we haven't pinpointed what was the original form of life for the most part. There is only one way you can know it's possible because of the logical argument: small changes over long periods of time, and the beneficial changes survive and the harmful ones die. When you try to actually understand what that means and how that would technically work, you get a headache, so you give up trying, and since you can't disprove it, you believe it must be true, and that is why anyone I know believes in the theory of evolution. Well, that's because everyone you know is apparently an idiot. I don't get a headache when I think about that. That makes perfect sense. Okay, scientists aren't like, "Ooh, this is hard. Let's just not think about it." You know, that's not how science works. Okay, you don't understand how science works. I mean, at this point in the letter, you're either ignorant, which isn't necessarily an insult; it just means you don't know. You're either ignorant, stupid, or purposely lying and being slimy to try to put God into evolution. By misrepresenting evolution and how science works. Now, I think I could disprove the logic, but it might take a few pages and a lot of thinking, and that is not worth doing with such a flimsy piece of evidence. That's the first intelligent thing you've said in this entire letter. Congratulations. I wonder if you'll keep it up. I doubt it. But I would give a short argument and say that the organism would destruct much faster than it could build. Obviously, if you don't do the math, then you can ignore such a possibility. I don't know what that means. Okay, I read that a couple times. I read this letter a couple times. I'm not entirely clear on what you're trying to get at here. Okay, either you're misunderstanding how evolution works. You know, I would destruct faster than I could change, right? Because I might have a positive mutation. Let's say hypothetically that I was born with some sort of positive mutation. Okay, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But that's not going to get better in me, and better and better and better. It's only going to get better in the next generation, right? You see, some organisms do die faster than they can evolve. Those are the organisms that are extinct, okay? That's why the most resilient organisms on this planet, forms of life and near-life forms, are bacteria and viruses. Because they reproduce so quickly, and they evolve much faster than everything else. That's why they are the most resilient forms of life. These things will exist long if some catastrophe were to befall the planet. These things would exist long after we're all dead. Okay, so maybe that's what you're getting at, but I don't know. In short, I cannot find a single reason to believe that mutations are random, never mind evidence for it, and therefore there is no reason to believe that natural selection has a different function in biology than it does in the evolution of anything else. Natural selection doesn't have a function in anything else, because all these other things are either non-living or artificial. Okay? Natural selection, in the way it works in nature, does not have anything to do with how we advance technology or whatever. It's not the same thing because I'm picking what I want, all right, out of something. Okay? You cannot equate natural selection with artificial machines and human-made things and things that aren't alive. Okay? You can't do that. You know, A star doesn't change and grow because it's advantageous to the star. Okay, that's not why that's happening. That's just how the shit happens, right? I don't understand all the way that works, okay? But the point is that that's not happening because it's advantageous somehow to the star. That's just how gravity and all the forces of physics are work, okay? Unless, of course, you believe that maybe you don't understand if other people do, and I believe them. I don't know what that means. If that's someone's argument, then that's fine, okay, I guess. I wouldn't try to change anyone's belief. I'm not going to go into convincing people with an authority to rely on. But if that is what you are basing your beliefs, then you should make sure that you know exactly who is the authority, or who the authority is, and find out what authority in science would disagree. Love your vids, Nasen. Well, I'm glad you love my videos, Nasen. But you, like I said, are either ignorant of how science works, or are stupid, or you are purposely lying and misrepresenting how science works, okay? Now, the only reason I read this is because it's interesting, all right? I haven't had something, an argument quite like this presented to me directly. Really what it is a big God of the gaps argument, okay? And because he doesn't understand it, it must be God, okay? And he's trying to make it sound like the scientists are the ones that don't understand, but that's not what's happening here. He doesn't understand. So it must be God. Okay, that's what he's done here. But it was an interesting way to have this presented. So that's why I read this. Could this person be educated? Possibly. It all depends on which of the three options he is. Ignorant, stupid, or lying. Okay? So, I hope you enjoyed having this shared with you. I thought it was interesting, so I'll see you folks later. Like I said, if you have something you need me to see to read, don't send that to me until Monday because I don't know what I'm getting and what I'm not getting. So wait until after they do their maintenance. So I'll see you folks later.